All right, today we're cracking open an urgent brief, and it's all about the Javan langur. We're going to zoom in on one really specific, really important population in the Luoyang Sanshang Nature Reserve. We want to understand exactly what these primates need to survive, and maybe more importantly, why their home is way more fragile than it looks. Let's get into it.
So, first things first, meet the Javan langur. This primate is endemic to Indonesia, which means you won't find it anywhere else on the planet. But here's the problem. Its official status is vulnerable. Now, that's not just a label, it's a serious warning sign that the population has been in decline.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the risks these langurs are facing, we need to know exactly where they live. And this isn't about the entire species. No, we're talking about one specific group that's literally living on the edge of the coast. Our focus is right here, the Luoyang Sanshang Nature Reserve. It's this beautiful coastal area in West Java. And this place isn't just some random spot on a map. It's a designated sanctuary, one of the last real strongholds for this particular primate. And this little detail? It's everything. The reserve has a few different habitats, right? You've got mangrove, beach, and lowland forests. But the research shows this langur population lives pretty much exclusively in that tiny, narrow strip of beach forest. You gotta remember that. It is the key to this entire story. So now, let's get to know the population itself. We're gonna look at the numbers, the vital stats that tell us about the health and the structure of these Sansang ligurs. Researchers found 19 distinct groups. Think of them like little families, all living within this coastal habitat. So they're not just one big herd roaming around. They're a collection of smaller social units, and each one has its own unique dynamics. So what do these groups actually look like? Well, this age breakdown is super interesting. Adults make up the biggest slice, 43%. But check this out. If you add up the juveniles and the young ones, that's 57% of the entire population. That suggests they're actively reproducing, which is awesome news. But it also means that most of them are still dependent and really, really vulnerable. Their social structure is also really specific. For every one adult male, you've got about 3 adult females. This is actually pretty common for langurs. You often have a single dominant male leading a whole group of females and their kids. It's a really key part of their social biology. Okay, so we know who they are. We know how their families are structured. Now let's dig into why that tiny strip of beach forest is so absolutely crucial for them to survive. Now, the study found 110 different plant species in their habitat. At first glance, that sounds amazing, right? Like a giant all-you-can-eat buffet? Well, not quite. Just because a plant is available doesn't mean it's on the menu. Langurs, it turns out, can be surprisingly picky eaters. In fact, out of all those 110 species, the langurs were only seen eating from 17 of them. That's not just being picky, that's extreme specialization. And that kind of specialization, well, it can make you vulnerable. And this table here really breaks down their super specific diet of leaves and fruit. But the main takeaway is that guy right at the top, the ketapung tree. The research showed that this one single species was their #1 most visited food source. It's their staple food, period. And here's where it all connects. The ketapang tree isn't just their favorite meal. It's also the most dominant tree in their beach forest home. So the health of this one tree is directly tied to the health of the entire langur population. Their food and their home, they're basically one and the same. But it gets even more serious than food. This quote from the study is really the heart of our brief. When it comes to being safe, resting and sleeping at night, every single one of those 19 groups depends exclusively on the trees in that narrow beach forest. Not the lowland forest, not the mangroves, only the beach forest. And this map, this is the visual proof. It's the big aha moment. Each one of those red dots, that's the sleeping site for a langur group. Just look at how they're all clustered in that tiny, tiny strip of land right along the coast. It just hammers home how completely, utterly dependent they are on this one fragile, linear home. So now that we see this total dependency, the need to protect this habitat becomes crystal clear. Let's talk about the biggest threat it's facing. The main threat to this linear home is something called habitat fragmentation. Basically, it's what happens when a continuous habitat, like this long coastal forest, gets chopped up into smaller, isolated islands of forest, usually by things like development or farming. For the Sangran langurs, this is a total disaster. Because their home is already just a thin line, any break in that line can cut a group off from food or from other langur groups. it turns their forest highway into a bunch of dead-end streets, trapping them and making them so much more vulnerable. So that brings us to the final critical question. We've seen an entire population of a vulnerable species living their whole lives in this fragile ribbon of coastal land. They sleep there, they eat there, they raise their young there. So what happens when that ribbon starts to fray or gets cut or just disappears completely?